Hey everybody, welcome back to our 18th episode of our Tuesday Night Healing. I'm indie author Nick Belisi, and join with me as always is Stormy. Stormy, say hi.
Hey everyone.
Tonight we're going to be doing impulsivity. I know we talked about this before, and we were setting it up because, like, as Stormy can tell you, I'm like that picture perfect definition of impulsivity, lack of self-control. And we're going to dive into that and find out exactly why. I'll share with you the things that I do that are impulsive. I'm sure Stormy can share with you a million things about what I do as well that's impulsive. And any impulsive behaviors she may have herself, or, suggestions and such. So, what is impulsivity exactly? It's the tendency to act without thinking. So, for example, you could blurt out something or buy something on a whim, or run across the street without looking. It's not the same thing as rudeness or lack of self-discipline. It's a behavior pattern that's basically starts in the brain. So, some people, it seems, confuse impulsivity with being compulsive, and they're actually different things. So, when people confuse impulsivity with compulsivity, the two related concepts that describe when you have trouble making thoughtful decisions. So the biggest difference is that impulsive behaviors are unplanned and spontaneous, whereas compulsive behaviors are repetitive and ritualistic. So example, sudden buying of an expensive item is an impulsive behavior, but repeatedly checking to see if the stove is off, that's a compulsive behavior. So they are different. I have both, I would say, honestly. A compulsive behavior that I tend to have, and I'm sure is common with people, is I know when I lay down at work, I got to get up at 4:40 in the morning. So I'll set my alarm. But before I actually go to sleep, I'll check it 4 different times, sometimes even more, to make sure that it's actually set. It's a compulsive thing that I do weekly, almost every single night. Even though I know in my head that I did it, I'm still constantly doing it. Or in my writing, when I'm writing something, I make sure I save it a million times. Even though I'm watching myself hit the save button, a minute or two later, I'm like, well, did I save that? And I'll keep doing it just to make sure. Because I'm so paranoid and so afraid that either I won't wake up for work, or, I didn't save my work, and then I go to close it out, and I'm, hating myself because I didn't have the things that I had completed. Some of the impulsive things I would say that I do, definitely buying things on a whim. I could be sitting there, and depending on what mood I'm in or something like that, I could see something interesting that I came across, and I'm just like, oh, I gotta have that. It actually happened to me last night. I was laying in bed, and I was going through Facebook, and I saw something come up from, I forget what the company's name was. I think it was All Time or something like that. And it popped up, and it had this thing, because I wanted to get something to replace this rubber bracelet thing that I've always had for many years. And I saw one that popped up, and I thought it was really cool. And I was like, oh, I have to have that. But I tried to stop myself. I was like, do you really need it? It's only $10, but do you really need it? Do you really need it? And I kept thinking, I was like, fuck it. And I just went and got it. So again, it was only $10, but I have that before. A lot of things I could point out in my room were bought on an impulsive buy rather than a well thought out plan. So, there's certain things like that. Drinking, especially, that has always been a big thing for me. I could be sitting there and being all week long, I'm sure Stormy could vouch for that. It's not going to happen, it's not going to happen, it's not going to happen. And then the second I hit my car leaving work on Friday, the only thing in my mind is heading right there to go get it. You can call it alcoholism or whatever you want. I call it impulsivity, because it's only twice a month that I do it. But, it is what it is. It depends on how you look at it. So what would be the causes that these things happen? Genetics, obviously, that's always a big one. If you have a family member with a mental health condition, you might be more likely to have that lack of control. Biology, an unusual brain or normal patterns might add to that. Social or environmental conditions. So growing up with money troubles, violence, neglect, or other challenges could lead to impulse control disorders for sure. Fun fact, men are more likely to have impulse control disorders. Didn't know that. You would think, and not to be like sexist or anything like that, but you would think like, the stereotypical thing that people say is like women always like shopping sprees and stuff like that, and all that. But no, it's actually men that are more impulsive. And it's by a lot too. So, Stormy, do you want to add anything to that so far?
Yeah, I was gonna say that like when I was younger, I seemed to be way more impulsive than I am now. I had when I was younger, I had like a shoe issue where I would buy shoes on impulse like all the time. Like I think one time I like had 100 pairs of shoes at one time.
Wow.
It was horrible. Like I was so like I don't know why I was fixated on shoes, but yeah.
It was them cowgirl
So
boots.
I guess, well, yeah, I had several pairs of boots for
Of
sure.
course you did.
But yeah, like I think back on like a lot of my impulse trips weren't just spontaneous; they were impulsive. Um, and now that once I've become a mom and with Hannah, I'm really not as impulsive as I used to be. I guess that's a good thing, but
Yeah,
we'll
absolutely.
see.
I've noticed that too. You know what I mean? I think that has a lot to do with like when you become a parent, you start to put their needs first. So instead of you just doing those like impulsive buys and stuff, you start thinking like, do I really have the money for that? Like, what if there's an issue down the road with them? They need to go to the doctor, or they need this or this or this. Like, yesterday I was saving up some money because I'm going on vacation next weekend, and you know, my child's mom hit me up and was basically like, well, I need money for this, 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 and this. And I'm just like, oh, just there goes a third of the vacation money out the window. But it's good that I was saving it, you know what I mean? Because then I would have been a bind on the next payday to, come up with all that. So I guess in a sense, there is a positive to it. And I think a lot of it has to do with maturing as well. As you get older and stuff, you start to become a little more responsible. So, that does help counterbalance what's going on. But there's 5 actually main things when it comes to this. There's main traits that can lead to impulsive actions. So the first one is positive urgency. Now, positive urgency refers to rash actions taken in response to positive ones. So like joy, euphoria, things like that. People will use impulsivity to create these types of emotions, because think about it. If you're going on like a shopping spree or something like that, you buy things, necessarily maybe you don't need them or whatever, but you're buying things that gives you that joy, that euphoria, materialistic items like things. The second one would be negative urgency. So negative urgency refers to rash actions taken in response for negative emotional states. So, when you're sad or you're scared or you're angry, you may just do things that are impulsive just to deal with it. Like, for example, I found like with sadness and stuff like that, in my history, I would find myself like going into like drinking and stuff like that if I was upset, or if I was angry or something. I would just want to escape that. So I would do those impulsive things, or, things like going to like the strip club, or like many years ago, like random hookups and stuff, like things of that nature to kind of deal with whatever was going on with me in that moment. A third thing, I guess this would have to do with that as well, sensation seeking. Now, sensation seeking, also called thrill seeking or excitement seeking, is a tendency to pursue new and different sensations, feelings, and experiences. So the trait describes people who chase novel, complex, and intense sensations and who love to experience it for its own sake, and who may take risks to pursue those experiences. So I guess that would be more under what I was just talking about with the casual hookups and things of that nature. It can be very dangerous, you know what I mean? It could have consequences as well, unwanted pregnancies, STDs, whatever the case may be. But, it's definitely a sensation seeking, so I think I teeter-totter with that as well. The fourth one would be lack of planning. So when you do something without planning, it's often referred to as acting impulsively or spontaneously. This means if you're acting on the spur of the moment without much forethought or preparation. you're again, the examples that we gave before, they all kind of like match up. I guess it really just depends on what you're going through in the moment. But honestly, I've experienced all five of them. So, and the last one is a lack of perseverance, the tendency to quit a task when it becomes difficult or boring. Um, it's a lack of self discipline or conscientiousness. So I could definitely say that too. There's been plenty of things like video games or tasks, like as far as like quotas with the book, like meeting certain things. Like I'll get bored or I'll get frustrated because like I'm not getting to where I want to or expressing what I want to, and I'll just be like, well, screw it and just be done with it. Same thing with like a game. You're sitting there, you're all into the game, then you start not doing so good, and then you're just like, well, fuck it, put it away. I don't need to do it anymore. I definitely had that. It was actually my ex-wife, who was the one that told me that I never followed through with anything when I was younger, that I would get so frustrated with whatever I was doing that I would never follow through with it. Or that, it was like I don't know. I don't really know what she was getting at with that, but she always said like when I went to college for the first time, like I guess I didn't finish it. But I viewed that as like I didn't want to be under a car for the rest of my life. So that's why I didn't finish it. It's not because I couldn't do it. It's just something that I didn't want to waste the money of going to and then not, do it. But she said all those things, and it actually motivated me. It motivated me that when I went to college for the second time around and I did 4.5 years and got my bachelor's degree, it was kind of just like a big, like, F you. I did it. I can, complete things if I want to. So, did you want to add anything to that, Stormy?
I was just going to add about, I feel the same about with video games, especially the Marvel game we used to play.
Yes.
I don't know how many times I quit, came back,
too many.
Quit. Like, it was just like, and then finally I was like, I'm quitting for good. I'm not going back, and I haven't. So, that, and then just with you, for sure, there's been a lot of times where I've seen so much growth. You recognizing your impulsive behaviors, somewhat stopping yourself before you do them, or at least right after you're understanding that okay, that was impulsive behavior. I get it. Things like that.
Absolutely. Well, and that brings us into our next point too. So, like, who's affected by it? Well, I mean, everybody to a certain degree is affected by it, but there are a couple that are affected more than most. And I gave 3 examples in this situation that are affected by it. So, like impulsivity, it falls within a lot of different mental healths. So, 3 examples that I did a little research on, to give example about it. One would obviously be BPD, borderline personality disorder. The second one would be bipolar, and the third one would be ADHD. So I got a little bit of tidbits for each one of them to kind of explain how they're similar yet different. So I'll get into that. So with borderline, the ways that they find themselves to be impulsive, such as myself, would be like risky behavior. So examples of that would be like unsafe sex, substance misuse, driving under the influence, or just general like thrill seeking. Another thing would be like aggressive behavior, such as yelling, fighting, breaking things, or getting physical, literally with others. Another thing would be self-harm, or going all the way as well. Having high emotional reactivity, lack of stability, such as frequently switching between jobs or starting or ending romantic relationships. I did find that myself, and I'm going to pause right there for a second because I did want to bring that up. And I noticed that about myself, like what Stormy said. When you're recognizing these impulsive behaviors and stuff like that, it kind of helps you along the lines to stop doing it, to kind of set boundaries and stuff, to know where that, starts happening for you. And I noticed that, I could be sitting there in my head and I could be thinking to myself like, oh, like I'd kind of like a relationship or, creature comfort or whatever the case may be. And then I pursue it. So like I'll go on a dating website or something like that. And maybe I'll start talking to a person or a few people or whatever the case may be. And it's all hunky-dory, if it gets past the whole ghosting bullshit. It's all hunky-dory and everything's fine. But then I find myself when I get to a certain point, like I start nitpicking like little things. Like I'll be like overly forthcoming when we talk, but if we ever meet or something like that, I notice I start nitpicking things. So I'll like look at somebody and I'm like, ooh, I don't like the way they did that or did that or did that, and then I just start like unraveling it. And then when it like balls up to the point where it's like it almost seems overwhelming to me, I will specifically sabotage it to make it go away. Um, and by sabotaging it, like I'll say things like, "Oh, like I have borderline," or whatever the case may be. Like I'll say, or I smoke cigarettes, or whatever the case may be. Like it's not like I'm doing anything maliciously bad. Like I'm bringing to light like my own issues because, in a way, I just want them to be like, "Oh, that's like too much," and walk away, rather than me just be like, "Yeah, I'm not really feeling this," and walk away myself because like not wanting to deal with the confrontation. It's like I'll find myself specifically doing those things to make the whole thing like spiral out. I did notice that, but it's been such a long time. Like I deactivated all those profiles and stuff like that. Like I really didn't want anything to do with it anymore, and I've been a lot happier because of it. Because I'm not worrying about that. Like I've just accepted the fact that like I'm comfortable where I'm at and I don't really need it. So like it's fine. But I wanted to bring that up about that. Same thing with the risky behavior and stuff like that. There were million times when I was younger, you know what I mean, like that I would go and just like do random hookups and stuff like that, and there was really no reasoning behind it. And in most of the cases, they were people that I normally wouldn't do anything with if I wasn't like intoxicated. It was just, I don't know, something that happened in that moment, something that happened that night. It was just something that happened. It's not like I went pursuing it. It was just something that was like, here's the opportunity, and I was just like, whatever. And the next morning you're waking up and you're just kind of like, yeah, maybe I shouldn't have done that. But back on our list here, attention and reassurance-seeking behaviors, thrill-seeking behaviors in general, binging on food or alcohol, etc., acting charismatic and dramatic despite often feeling empty or unfulfilled, overspending, making one's mind up very quickly or jumping to conclusions, which I cannot tell you how many times I've done that. It seems like when I'm navigating situations and stuff like that, I'll like think of an idea in my head just by the way I'm talking to somebody. So I could be having a conversation, the tone of their voice changes, or the way they're standing, like their body language or something like that, and then I'm immediately like running through all these different situations in my head on what's their motive for bringing up this topic or saying this, and I'm like constantly playing chess on 3 different checkerboard or chess boards at once. Like, well, if they say this, what are they doing this? Why do they say this? Are they doing this? Like, what's their intention? Like, and my mind is constantly racing like that, trying to figure out a solution as to why the conversation was steered this way, or why they went from like standing all happy to like crossing their arms and like looking at me intently. Like it's exhausting doing this all day long. It's extremely, extremely exhausting. But at some point you certainly get used to it, and you don't think about it as much. It's kind of just like a natural response. But it does get exhausting. It certainly does. Another one on here is changing your mind seemingly out of nowhere. Yeah, had that happen a lot, especially my opinions of people and stuff like that. I can go from, being like normal with them or something like that, and then something like innocuous can happen, and then all of a sudden it's that black and white thinking that's popping up, and I'm just like, they have different intentions, they're out to be malicious, they don't really care about me, and then it just starts spiraling from there. But again, learning about these things and doing these things, it does get better. I mean, I'm sure Stormy could say that when we first started talking like 6 years ago, the way I handle things and do things is vastly different than how things are done today. I mean, what would you say, Stormy?
Oh God, difference of night and day. Pretty much a lot of things, especially how I know, like you were talking about, you still play out scenarios in your mind. I know you do.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're constantly thinking about different scenarios or which way it's going to go or what not go. You still do that, but I don't think you do it as bad. Same thing with like trying to sabotage uh, friendships, things like that. We've pretty much like found the niche of where, we both have our, um, boundaries
Mm-hmm.
with each other and stuff, and that's kind of helped steer our friendship into, something that's, good, and it's stable, and it's good for both of us, for sure.
Absolutely.
So that kind of helps with some of those things with you, and even myself, as far as like being a friend or things like that. I mean, to have that stability in that person definitely helps curb some of those impulsive behaviors, and you have somebody that you can turn to that's not going to judge you when you do something impulsive.
Mm-hmm.
So that is really nice to have as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. It takes, it takes a support system. It takes a strong support system, and I'm grateful for, Stormy being there through all the, ups and downs and everything like that. It really does. It does. And it took a lot of like tries and stuff like that to, understand where she's coming from, see the things that I'm doing and stuff like that, and then try to correct those actions. Obviously it's not perfect. Like, I'm not perfect whatsoever, not even remotely close. But, I've learned a lot of different things, and I've learned how to navigate it a lot better, especially in like a lot of different regards. So, on our second one, though, bipolar disorder. So, specifically, during periods of acute mania, patients with bipolar disorder frequently demonstrate an increase in impulsive behaviors such as uncontrolled spending, promiscuity, and suicide attempts. So, on the same frame as what's going on with borderlines, but borderlines tend not to be manic, and that's really like a big separator too when it comes to bipolar and borderline. Some of the irrational behaviors that happen with bipolar is during episodes of mania and depression, someone with bipolar disorder may experience strange sensations, such as seeing things or hearing things or smelling things that are not necessarily there. Basically like hallucinations. They may also believe things that seem irrational to other people, like delusions. So, what is mania? For those that don't know, a manic phase of bipolar, typically these would be the things that are included with it. Feeling very, very happy, elated, or like overjoyed, just like a burst of like this happiness, like way over the top. Talking very, very quickly, being very intentive and all that. Feeling full of energy. There's things like you just be cleaning the house or doing a project here, bouncing over here, like all these different things going on. Having this grandiose self-importance, feeling like full of great new ideas and having all these important plans, like you're just going quick. But then it flip-flops. You can be easily distracted. You can't focus on anything. You can be easily irritated or agitated and get angry really easy and just be like real short with people. You could be delusional or have hallucinations or, have like not clear thinking, paranoia. You could be like wide awake, not being able to sleep. Your mind's constantly just going and going and going. You could be doing things that often have like a disastrous consequence, such as like spending stupid money on expensive things or even things that you can't afford just because you're in that state of mania. Or making decisions or saying things that are out of character just to try to hurt people, just because you're in that state and, you're just trying to do it. The third one, ADHD. People with ADHD, their symptoms typically include that they're like impatient. They have a hard time like waiting in line to talk or to, just basically wait in line to do anything. Wait their turn. Like they have to like go. Like I can't wait on this. I have to do this. Or if they blurt out things without waiting for the question to be done or even, to think logically of what they're talking about. They interrupt or intrude on others, such as butting into a conversation. They could be like in a conversation with somebody and like a thought could pop into their head and be like, oh, no, hey, oh, and then they just jump in. Like I've seen that with people with ADHD. They can engage in like reckless, risky, or antisocial activities without thinking about the consequences. So like an example of that would be like children or teens get suspended or expelled from school for acting irresponsible. They could just be doing impulsive things in school without thinking of the consequences that they're going to get in trouble or anything like that. Impulsiveness could also affect like driving or just safety in general. It's a good example would be like road rage. Somebody cuts you off or something like that. You're not thinking logically in that moment. You're going right with what you feel. Now maybe you're cutting this guy off, or you're speeding off, you're driving recklessly, but you're not thinking about the consequences of, hey, maybe I didn't see that patch of ice there, and there's a million different outcomes of how that can go down. And then the last thing would be like having a temper outburst. Another big thing when it comes to ADHD is like inattentiveness. So inattentiveness is like having a shorter than expected attention span based on a person's age. And, they can have trouble like listening when they're spoken to directly. Like I've noticed that there's people that I've talked to, and like you'll be telling them something and like it'll look like they're paying attention and stuff like that, but then like a second later they're like, huh? What? What'd you say? What'd you say? And they look like they're listening and talking, but they may not be like there, like they might be off somewhere else. Being easily distracted or staying on task. So an example, like a person is going to fail to finish projects or make careless mistakes related to, these projects, even though they understood the instructions and show willingness to do the work, they just became so distracted and stuff like that. And, unfortunately, people have gotten so used to saying stupid things like, people who aren't diagnosed with ADHD, they'll be like, oh, it's just my ADHD. Or, people that are like a little more wound, oh, it's just my ADD. Or people will be like, oh, you're acting bipolar or something like that. Like, it's like a really shallow way of looking at it, because unless you were diagnosed with it, I mean, you can't really sit there and say, oh, I'm just being bipolar. Like, you don't really know what that real bipolar feels like. So it's kind of, shitty for you to say things like that. And I've caught so many people working on the window and stuff like that saying that. It's like, oh, it's just my ADHD. I was like, well, do you really have ADHD, or are you just saying that because you just like goofed and just did something out of turn? So another thing would be to be forgetful. Like they could lose things that are needed for stuff, such as like school assignments or books or grocery list, or something that you need for work, like your badge, something like that. Like there's a lot of forgetfulness. And then it could also be like avoidance or dislike or reluctant to do tasks that required more mental effort than normal. That would be another thing. There's a lot of things that go along with that. Everyone experiences somewhat of the symptoms and stuff, but if you have it, you've been formally diagnosed, you'll know if you have it. Again, everybody has impulsive behaviors, some just more extreme than others. So before we get into the last part, Stormy, did you have anything else?
I was going to say with Hannah having autism, she also has an ADHD diagnosis. And she definitely has a lot of impulsive behaviors, and definitely a lot of the attention issues, focusing issues, things like that. Like if something she's not wanting to do, she doesn't want to do it, especially with school stuff, things like that. So it's a big challenge, especially for someone that has not only the ADHD diagnosis, but the autism diagnosis along with it. So that's been kind of nuts trying to deal with that and figure out the best ways to keep her, learning and growing and not just going straight to the impulsive behaviors or things like that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I know Stormy's talked about it many times, but autism and stuff like that, it's very similar to like BPD. Like, there are similarities to it. I mean, she's pointed out to me, I never did the research on autism and stuff, but when obviously as I got to know Stormy and what she goes through and stuff, and then she pointed out to me the similarities and stuff, it actually does have a lot of things in common. That's for sure. So how do you treat impulsive behaviors? So there's a couple rules with that. Like there's a couple methods of thought when dealing with that. One thing, which we just talked about the other day, is practicing mindfulness and emotional wellness. If you're emotionally well, you'll be less likely to act impulsively. You'll be able to think things out more rationally without letting emotion get in the way of your judgment. So that, that's obviously always going to be the key for probably anything that we talk about, is practicing mindfulness and being self-aware. Avoid situations that trigger impulsive behavior. Certain things, I would say, like for me, if I go out to the bar, I can be sure that I'm going to act on impulsive behaviors. So to avoid that, I don't go. That would be one example. Another example is, if I know that I have like extra money that I don't really need, maybe I shouldn't go on Amazon, or maybe I shouldn't go on, this website or this website, like, because then I'll find myself like, oh yeah, I'll get that. You know what you're impulsive about. So try to trace it back and see what starts it, what gets the ball moving for you to act on that impulsive behavior. And if it's something that you don't want to do anymore, kind of nip it off right there. Nip it off and say, like, this right here is what was getting me to that point. So, I'm not going to put myself in the beginning stages of this to ultimately lead to the end part of it. Get to ask for help. Asking for help is always such a great thing. Ask a friend, ask a family member, a trusted colleague, your mental health professional, whatever the case may be, wherever you feel comfortable going with your problems. And that would be the person to confide in. Have them start noticing, if they haven't already, when you're acting impulsive and the things that are helping drive it, because they may be able to point out, like Stormy's done to me many times, things that they see you doing irrationally and impulsively, and you may not even notice it, but once they point it out, you're like, oh, that's why, that makes sense. And then you could start to avoid these things that are triggering it to happen. You can create alternate outlets for your impulsivity. So if you know that if you do this, you're going to act this way, try to come up with a different outlet. Let's see. Sierra says, taking a step back to look something over and think about it first helps me. Yes, absolutely. Taking yourself out of the situation, reevaluating it, and then trying to weigh out the options and stuff like that, obviously, yes, such a great thing to do. Your environment. Sometimes being in a certain environment will act impulsively. Like a big thing for me, I'm going down to see my dad for his birthday and stuff like that next weekend, but I know being in that environment around my brother and my dad tends to have me like drink and stuff like that, because that's the culture in which I was raised in, the things that they do. So this is going to be an especially trying time for me to take a step back from that and, not partake how I'm used to doing. And it's going to be a big step for me, because I want to be able to prove to myself that I can do that. So this is going to be a good one for me. I'll be out of my element. It's not like I could just go home and, be in my normal headspace and stuff like that should I partake in such things. So, it's one of those things where I've been weighing out the options since I decided to be going there, and, have a plan set forth on how I'm going to deal with that. And I'm confident that I think I can. So, that'll be something that we'll definitely touch up on afterwards to see if I fulfilled what I was looking to do. And then I could give examples on how I completed it and, the emotions I felt and such. Substance abuse issues. If you have them, try your best to stay away from them. Obviously, it's easier said than done. I could speak on that for an entire session, but we're not going to go into that because that's not what this session's about. But if you know them, stay away from things that are triggering towards it. If you know that Friday night is a triggering thing for you, that if you have nothing going on, then you're going to do it, try to come up with a plan for something for you to do. Give yourself a task. There have been times with me in the past where I had volunteered to work on Saturday or go somewhere on Saturday, so that way I would have something that I needed to do, so I specifically couldn't partake in that Friday night thing. You have to kind of just start nipping at it to figure it out. More recently, like I would use things like video games or something, like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to play this video game, and that's what's going to distract me and stuff. So you just got to figure it out. Now, there are medications you can take. There are. It really depends. You're going to want to obviously consult a doctor and stuff like that before going and taking it upon yourself to start trying medications. But, if you talk to your primary physician or your mental health physician, you can certainly figure out some of the examples that they gave when it came to the ones you could take would be like selective serotonin inhibitors, selective neurogenic inhibitors, also known as SNRIs, opioid antagonists. I don't know opiates to be a good thing, but it is on the list as far as things to take. Um, Antipsychotics and lithium. I'm not a big believer in taking, those types of things like lithium and stuff. I was in a relationship with somebody who was on lithium, and I watched exactly how that affected her. I've also had friends that had taken things like Prozac and stuff, and not something I ever wanted to try. I saw the swings and the mood changes and all that stuff, and it scared the crap out of me to the point where I would never want to try something like that. I'd rather live in this world crazy and unique than like a zombie or erratic. But it's just my personal opinion. Some people I'm sure it works for. I've just never seen that in my experiences. But the most prominent thing that's proven to help with that is actually CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy. That can help restructure and rewire yourself so that way you're not doing these impulsive behaviors. It focuses on exposing, the relationship between a thought and the behavior. So if you can get yourself up to sign up for that CBT class, there's a lot that are offered. Your counselor can offer it to you, or even, you could go to your local hospital where they have their mental health ward and talk to somebody. And there are classes that are mostly offered, and you could sign up for them and, get some help with that. So it's something to look into if you know that you're doing that. I have been told in my, history that CBT is not a positive thing for me because of the borderlines. It's DBT that's the most positive about it. And I did, not the full year-long DBT, but I did the 12-week one. And there was certain things, and obviously, I continue every once in a while work on the workbook. There's certain things I learned from it that are definitely helpful. A lot of it has to deal with self-control. I mean, if you can master self-control, then you can master a lot of things. And if you can realize, the things that you're doing wrong, be insightful about them and be corrective about them, then you're only going to benefit yourself in the long run. Because as we're coming to a close with this, you have to be mindful, and practicing mindfulness is always key to anything. And when you're mindful, especially if you're mindful about other people and you're sympathetic or empathetic, with people, you can learn your actions and the consequences of your actions and what you're doing to other people along with what you're doing to yourself. And when you can start to break it down, like a good thing I've always done is keep a journal and write down like issues that I've had, and you can kind of see a pattern. So if I went back in my journals from like 2015, 16, 17, anything like that, I can see not only how I've changed from now in my ideas of thinking, but my mind works in that way that when I read those journal entries, I could be brought back in that moment in my head, know what I was feeling that day, and basically like live out like a mini memory of that, like in like my mind's eye of what was going on at that point, and literally remember detailed things from that time. And that's always helped with me. But it also helps in learning and doing new things too, because if you sit down and you start learning these things and learning your behaviors and seeing how they wound up, you also have the consequences at that time of what took place. So if you start going down that road again, things are going to turn out probably the exact same way. It's like what they say about history. If you don't learn about history, you're doomed to repeat it. I mean, that can't be any more true. So, in closing, it's all about being honest. You have to be honest not only with yourself, but the people around you. And when you're honest and you stop being afraid of the consequences of being honest, you're going to feel a lot better. You're going to go a lot further. It's not about being, intently blunt to hurt somebody. With your honesty, obviously, it's like with AA. One of the steps of AA is like apologizing for your wrongdoing unless it's going to hurt somebody. So you want to be attentive about that. Like, okay, like I want to tell this person that, this is whatever, but at the expense of what? Is it going to hurt them? Is it going to do this? Like, you don't want to go above and beyond and hurt somebody, but you want to be honest with them as to, just be upfront. Don't lie. Don't make up stories. Like, people who lie are people who are afraid. And if you're not afraid of the consequences, then there's no reason for you to lie. It's just about being honest with yourself and honest with others. Taking responsibility for responsibility for the things that you do and the actions that you create, and any pain or anything like that goes along with it. You have to be mindful. It really is. And I know I just keep saying that and saying it and saying it, but the more I learn about mindfulness from doing these Tuesday night healings and stuff, is the more important it becomes. And being mindful is key. It is. And I'm glad we had our talk about that, the other week. And it's a beautiful thing. Stormy, did you have anything you wanted to add to that before we come to a close?
Yeah, I just want to say, like you were talking about the CBT therapy, like with Hannah, they have something more geared towards the autism part of it, but it's called applied behavior analysis therapy.
Oh,
And
okay.
it's basically um, helps improve attention, focus, social skills, memory, and academics, decreases problem behaviors. So it's really good for her, and she's been in it since she was little. Um, so that's kind of very similar to CBT, but on for the autism side of it. But I was going to say, like her doctors prescribe pretty much. She has done everything you listed,
Mm-hmm.
medication wise, from the time she was little till maybe a couple of years ago when I took her off of all the medications and switched her to CBD oil. So
That's
they
another
do
thing.
not help.
And that's another thing too. It's a good thing that you brought that up. So, okay, in your history, when it comes to Hannah, when you've sat there and you did what the doctors told you to do with all those different medications and stuff like that, and I remember you telling this a while back that you were using CBT and it like was like a godsend, like it helped you a lot. Can you like explain on that a little bit?
Yeah, like basically, it's a difference of night and day. When you have something that helps her be able to focus, be able to, like when she's having some issues, to redirect herself,
Mm-hmm.
um, things like that. It's really been a big change in that. Maybe as she's gotten older too, you know, the development comes with it too. But she's been in all kinds of therapy since she was diagnosed at age 3. So I that's the one that's worked, the best for her. And then the CBD oil has worked the best for her as far as any type of medication.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I would never put her back on any pharmaceutical meds because they were so detrimental. I mean, I can only imagine. I've only been on Zoloft, and it had really bad effects on me
Mm-hmm.
for my anxiety and panic disorder. So I got off of it. I can't even imagine what she went through being all that stuff, which are just really extreme meds for a child, much less an adult.
Mm-hmm.
But again, some people have very good success with medication. I don't knock medication if it works for somebody, but I just know in my history with myself and with her that pharmaceutical meds just did not work. You have to have something else to fall back on, which is the CBD oil, the other therapies. Those types of things are really, really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And it may be something that anyone watching, looks into CBD. With the breakthroughs and stuff like that and how it's becoming more widely available, it may be something. Like me personally, I was taking CBD for a while and it was working, but I started to get a little paranoid and stuff like that. Like way, way back. I mean, when I was like in my early 20s, like teens and early 20s, like I would smoke weed and that seemed to help me and stuff like that. But then once I joined the Navy, like I stopped doing that. And then when I got out, I tried to do it again. It just made me like overtly paranoid. And I think the last time that I tried it like years ago, it made me feel like I was like tripping out on like acid. Like it was like the weirdest thing. But then I looked into it and they said it's actually like a pretty common thing with people who have BPD to experience that. But that's not to say that everybody has that because there's like 256 different variations of BPD, so don't take what I'm saying like to be your case as well. Some people it does work for. I've actually met people who have it that do it and it helps calm them and relieve them. In my case, it just doesn't. It makes me more over paranoid. It makes me have panic attacks. It makes me worry. It's just not something that I prefer to do. But it may be something worth looking into if you're struggling with impulsive behaviors or anxiety or something like that. It could definitely be, something that helps with that. So, and it's a more natural effect than taking prescription medication. So the next time that we meet will be this Thursday. We are going to be doing chapter 12. Chapter 12 has a lot of Easter eggs in it compared to the other chapters, so there'll be plenty to talk about after we read it. We are going to have Steve come back. He is going to be playing Detective Hunt. Stormy, obviously, and myself are going to be doing that. We are introducing a new character in this chapter as they go to the TikTok diner. So that's something to look forward to as well. I think it's a fun chapter. It's informative. We'll put it that way. So it's definitely informative. So I'm looking forward to, doing that. Our next Tuesday night healing is actually going to be on self-harm. So it could be a very triggering episode for sure. I had a very vast history with that when I was younger. So I'm willing to share some stories about that. Obviously, if it's too triggering for some, it may be an episode you might want to skip. But we are going to, come up with the ways that I dealt with it to make things more positive. Obviously, to help others. It's not something I'm proud of, but in a sense, it was one of those things that got me through tough times, and it may not have been the healthiest way to deal with it, but at the time I felt that it was necessary. So I thought it'd be something helpful to talk about, especially with everything that's going on recently. Like we talked about the other week with emotional wellness, there's another content creator that's been spiraling and stuff like that, and talking about those sorts of things, but the way that they're addressing it on their social media platform is more so saying that they're going to do it, which is triggering other people. The way I'm going about it is more of a helpful and reassuring and positive way to bring light to it, but also give helpful solutions on how to avoid it. So I thought it would be necessary when we planned this out a couple weeks ago to really touch base on that. So that's where we'll go with that. And then I actually already did my research and stuff like that. So another thing to get people hyped up for is I'll be reporting live from South Carolina, not next week, but the week after. And we're going to be talking about relationships. Like, did you know there's about 28 different types of relationships that are well known? I didn't know that. But doing my research and stuff like that, I found out about a lot of different relationships. I guess the joke of the night before we log off is I didn't realize that I was in an open relationship because I was getting cheated on all the time. See, I thought I was getting cheated on, but I think that I was in an open relationship. I just wasn't told that it was open. It's just a joke, but I learned about lots of different relationships and stuff. Polymorous, polygamous, situationship, which I had no idea what the hell that was, but I'll save that for when we're doing that. So that's something to look forward to. So I'm going to jump off because I'm going to do story time with Stormy. She corrected me. She wasn't acting impulsive today. She was acting impatient because last week I wrote the end to the book of book 3, but I still have 8 more chapters to go. But she just couldn't wait anymore. It was driving her crazy. I need to know how the story ends. So I wound up backtracking a little bit today and writing chapter 19 as well so she can understand how the end was created. So we're going to jump off, and I'm about to ruin the story for her and basically make her use a whole box of Kleenex with the tears that are going to be coming with how the story ends.
I got a fresh box of Kleenex.
Yes, so that's what I'm going to be doing now. We are going to be giving a teaser soon, I do promise. If I stay on the track that I'm going right now, it's looking like the end of February I'll actually have the entire book completely written, as long as I don't hit any issues. It should be about the end of February that it'll be done. And then I got to go through the rereading it a few times and revisions and grammar checks and all that stuff, making sure I got the cover that I want and all that. So I'm anticipating an April release. That's my soft best guess right now is like an April release. Obviously, as we get a little bit closer and stuff like that, I'll give a more concrete answer, but I'm aiming for April. So, thank you guys for joining us again for our 18th episode of this. Like I said, when we get to like our 50th, we'll do something special, maybe like a culmination of everything we've done thus far and all that. But, we've hit 20 with our readings so far, and we've hit 18 with this. So, a couple more of each, and we'll be at our 50th episode of live streaming, which is pretty crazy to think that we're getting to that milestone. But as always, thank you guys again. And I hope to see you on Thursday for the book review. If you haven't gotten the book yet, you can certainly get it on Amazon. The book we are reading currently, before we sign off, is Paradise Reborn. And again, it's on Amazon for 99 cents for the Kindle version, a little bit more for the hardcover copies, obviously because of printing costs and what Amazon charges. But, check it out. Get caught up with us, or jump on our YouTube, which is the link is in my TikTok and stuff like that, and get caught up of all the readings we've done thus far, because they're all posted from both books. So, something worth checking out. So thank you guys again for joining us, and I will see you guys on Thursday.